Mold is much more of a problem than it ever was, but is it really affecting the health the way you think it is? Learn what's really happening with mold in today's video. Learn how mold is impacting your health, understand its connection to long COVID, and what you can do to resolve the symptoms that are frequently associated with mold. Hello and welcome to this growing community of people who are ready to heal from weird mystery symptoms that conventional medicine doesn't have answers for. I am Carrie Bailey, your functional nutritionist. I help people with long COVID, anxiety, depression, and we use specific therapeutic foods, supplements, and herbs to heal. One of the reasons mold is such an issue today is because of all the high level frequencies that are on our planet. There are EMFs from microwaves and cell phones to 5G towers to antennas to radio signals. And so it's especially bad in densely populated locations. One of the reasons people here in California get sick is because we are surrounded by cell phone towers. So for instance, within a 3-mile radius of me, there's 803 cell phone towers and 1,270 antennas just within a 3-mile radius. That's pretty intense, right? It's a lot of EMFs on my body and my home. If you're curious about how many cell phone towers and antennas are near you, I'll put a link down in the description below to antennassearch.com. Let's clarify different types of mold, because not all mold is dangerous. Food mold grows on all food. It's not just specific foods that mold grows on. It's generally harmless and part of the natural decomposition process, but this mold isn't the mold you need to worry about. There's also mold that lives on dust. So if you have a very dusty house, there's going to be a lot of mold there. And so you want to clean that. But this isn't the mold that's really the problem. There's environmental mold. Outside, there's all kinds of molds. Here in California, it rains in the winter. And so then in the spring, like February or March, when it starts to dry up, and get dry, all those mold spores fly away, right? They go all over the air and they can get in your nose. So if you have a weak immune system, you can have a reaction to those mold spores that are flying around. But again, this mold is not the problem. The mold you want to worry about is the toxic black mold. This is Aspergillus stachybotrys. This is the kind of black mold that grows behind walls and buildings, especially water damaged buildings or when there's high EMF exposure, as we already talked about. Mold lowers your immune system. When you encounter mold, your immune system is trying to grab it up really quickly and get rid of it, right? So that it doesn't circulate and go into your brain, right? So your immune system is putting out fires all the time if you're surrounded by mold. If your immune system is already weak or your mold exposure is prolonged, the more mold can infiltrate your body and the harder your immune system has to work, right? That's one of the connections between long COVID and mold, and that is a weakened immune system is also one of the factors of people with long COVID. The truth is, mold isn't the primary cause of your symptoms. That's right. I said, the truth is, mold isn't the primary cause of your symptoms, but rather a trigger. So in functional medicine, we call this multifactorial. This means that mold is just a trigger, not a root cause. So mold's exposure can weaken your immune system, right? Allowing whatever's in your body, latent viruses like Epstein-Barr, which is probably the most common virus in the world, by the way, unwanted bacteria to thrive. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that viruses like Epstein-Barr and unproductive bacteria also are behind the symptoms of long COVID. That's the connection, right? The underlying causes of some of the symptoms of mold and some of the symptoms of long COVID are the same. And those are also caused by not the mold, not the COVID, but whatever's going on in your body, the other viruses that are happening. Consider these scenarios. So maybe one person was healthy, perfectly healthy, right, to their expectation, perfectly healthy, and they were exposed to mold, right? And that mold weakened their immune system and allowed those dormant viruses and bacteria to awaken, to come alive, right? So now they're partying and your immune system is trying to deal with it and the mold, and it can't do both. The second scenario is you are already struggling with symptoms, you're already having problems, health problems, and then you're exposed to mold. Now you've got this mold burden, which is distracting your immune system from fighting whatever you've got in your body, and you've got this mold exposure. So your symptoms likely got worse or shifted to some additional symptoms that you didn't know you had before, right? Anything can happen, as I always say. Have you ever noticed that the common mold-related symptoms overlap with other conditions like viruses, candida, and autoimmune illnesses? Fatigue as a symptom, right? You can see fatigue in viruses, right? Definitely known Epstein-Barr, and you have mono fatigue. Candida is associated with fatigue. Autoimmune is associated with fatigue. Long COVID is associated with fatigue. And mold is associated with fatigue, okay? That's issue number one. Here's another symptom. Any kind of respiratory symptoms, whether it's coughing, wheezing, shortness of breath, nasal congestion. Now, these can be associated with not just viruses, but also histamine intolerance, mold, long COVID, and streptococcus. Other symptoms, skin rashes, irritated skin, itchy skin, hives, and any other skin condition, right, is usually associated with either an autoimmune illness, histamine intolerance, mold, and long COVID. But again, is it really mold? Is it really long COVID? And then there's neurological symptoms, dizziness, confusion, difficulty concentrating, memory problems. It's been associated with autoimmune, histamine intolerance, long COVID, mold, Lyme. Okay, here's another one, sinus infections, chronic sinusitis, sinus congestion, likely tied to mold, or streptococcus, or histamine intolerance and long COVID. So, the question becomes, what is it really? Is it multifactorial? Are there multiple things happening? Do you have a virus? Do you have strep? And do you have mold, right? So digestive issues like nausea, bloating, changes in bowels can be associated with streptococcus, histamine intolerance, mold, and long COVID, right? So that's just a sampling, right, of some of the symptoms that you might be experiencing and being told that it was mold. But is it really mold, or is there other issues going on? The key is recognizing that these symptoms can stem from various underlying causes, not just mold. You can react to a little mold that's visible in your house, and you could react to extreme mold that's hidden behind a wall. So the mold that you're finding isn't the cause, but it's the trigger. It's triggering your immune system. It's distracting your immune system from the true underlying issue. This is why you might have multiple people living in the same home, but not everybody's sick, right? Like 2 or 3 people might live in the home, only one person's sick. Same scenario with a workplace, right? If there's an office and they found mold, or a person's really sick with mold illness, that person might be experiencing mold symptoms, but everybody else might not. If you've been exposed to this mold and you've got all these underlying infections that maybe you didn't know about, then it's like your cup is overflowing, causing your symptoms to either start, if you've never had symptoms before, or worsen with the mold exposure. The mold is lowering your immune system and making you susceptible to what's going on already in your body. The problem is when you go to a doctor, like if you think it's mold and you go to a doctor or practitioner who specializes in mold, they will always find mold and they will always treat mold. I've never seen a mycotoxin test that didn't come back with elevated markers. Let's talk first about what a mycotoxin test is. So mold is the fungus, if you will, that's living, and it releases toxins called mycotoxins. And so what they're measuring on these tests is generally mycotoxins that are found in your urine. Generally, there's might be other tests for mold, but that's the big one, is the urine test for mold. As I've said, I've never seen a mycotoxin test that didn't come back with elevated markers. But remember, it's the distraction, not the problem you're trying to solve. Sometimes these test results will show a little bit of mold, and sometimes they'll show a little bit of mycotoxins, and other times they'll show a lot of mycotoxins. I don't mean to diss any practitioner out there. So there are well-intended doctors, practitioners that really do believe the problem is mold. They're not trying to scam you. They just might not know about looking at other factors. They really do think it's mold. And then sometimes they treat people, and sometimes people get better with their protocols. But I would argue that they probably don't get 100% better unless they're also addressing other underlying root causes. I've worked with lots of naturopaths and doctors who often diagnose patients' symptoms as mold. So they'll look at their health history, they'll look at their symptoms, and they're like, okay, this sounds like mold. So then sure enough, we run a mycotoxin test, and sure enough, it comes back positive. So then we go and follow through and we treat the mold, and guess what? The symptoms don't change, or they might change slightly, but not 100%. So this gets you curious, like, okay, what's going on here? So maybe they got better because we put them on supplements to address their nutritional deficiencies, or helped support their immune system, or other things. But I would argue that based on my experience, that the mold protocols themselves that are out there are not resolving the underlying root cause of your symptoms. So this got me really curious, the fact that every single mycotoxin test I got back was positive, right? I didn't have a bunch of healthy people, unfortunately, to test this on, right? That would be the true test, is if I ran a mycotoxin test on healthy people with no symptoms, did they present with positive mycotoxins? That I don't know. If you've been treated with mold and you have not found 100% complete recovery, consider that it may be something else, like a virus, streptococcus, a toxin, or worse, all three, right? Symptoms are your clue. What I get concerned about is when people are told that they can't heal until they completely remediate the mold around them, or they must run from the mold, or they go down all kinds of rabbit holes and they have to get rid of all their belongings and, live in a bubble. And that concerns me, because I think that doctors need to look deeper. They need to look at the symptoms, not just, okay, you're positive on mycotoxin, that's it, and stop there, right? I think there's more. And I encourage you to get curious and think maybe there's more. If you're dealing with long COVID or other unexpected symptoms, check out my long COVID recovery guide for more in-depth solutions. This guide is my essential steps to healing long COVID and other weird mystery symptoms like mold. I've left a link to my long COVID recovery guide in both the description and in the comments below. So check them out if you're interested. Let's jump into solutions. So addressing mold exposure is essential, but it's not about eliminating mold completely. Focus on strengthening your immune system and addressing the true root causes, the other viruses, bacteria, and toxins that are happening in your body. Some steps to heal. Number one step is to calm your nervous system. Now, we've talked about this in previous videos. There's ways you can do this. You can do breath work, meditation. There are programs out there to help you calm your nervous system. So there's some other ways to calm your nervous system. One is to remove caffeine, which is a stimulant, chocolate, which also has a stimulant, gluten, dairy, and alcohol. Now, the foods that you want to bring in to support your nervous system are leafy greens, things like spinach, arugula, mustard greens, herbs, kale, and dandelion greens. And you can even get dandelion greens as a tea. There are these special phytochemical compounds that are only found in leafy greens or leafy green herbs, right, that they possess. You cannot find these compounds in a supplement. So that's why you can't just supplement your way out, right? You have to be eating specific foods to heal. Spinach, for instance, is an amazing healing mineral-rich food for health, but it's also been deemed a bad guy for a lot of reasons, right? It's called a high oxalate food, it's called a high histamine food. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you react to this food, understand that that's a detox reaction. It does not mean you are intolerant to it. Instead of putting in a whole salad of spinach or a whole soup of spinach, just have a leaf of spinach, right? Have one leaf of spinach every day and increase, and then have two, and then have three, and find your tolerance level. And if you hit your tolerance level, back down a leaf, right? And then increase. So you treat it just like a supplement, because it really is a healing food. If you've avoided this nutrient-dense food for a long period of time because you're following a low oxalate diet, low histamine diet, the other thing you can do is start with arugula if you don't have any greens in, which is a low histamine, low oxalate, and low FODMAP. I will warn you that arugula is high in sulfur. So if you're reacting to it, that might be that you're not processing your sulfurs well. This is all a really slippery slope, right? When you start taking foods out that you avoid because you're reacting to them, before you know it, you're going to be down to 3 foods. Like I had a client come to me and she was only eating lamb, coconut oil, and salt, right? And we know those aren't healing foods. So the question is, like, how do you start unraveling those knots? How do we get her feeling safe to bring in certain foods. How do we bring in foods where she's going to not have a strong reaction and again trigger PTSD and other things. So it really can be a downward spiral of things, and sometimes you really need to have some hand holding when you're going through this process. The second step you want to do in healing from mold is to clear your detox pathways, right? This is methylation. So this is basically how your liver works, and methylation happens a billion times a second in your body. And so it's important. It's the thing that helps you make new cells, etc. So you want to make sure you have a really good B complex in, right? Plus a sublingual B12. It really needs to be sublingual because most people's guts are not working well. Now, I call these sort of global healers, right? You might feel a reaction, a positive reaction, or you might not, depending on where you are. But it's important for your immune system. It's important for your nervous system. If you're sensitive, you might start with a B complex with no methylated B vitamins in it. So if you're reacting to methylated B vitamins, pull out the methyls. Just have a B complex with no methylated vitamins. And if you're curious about what that is, I've talked about it in other videos, or you can leave a comment below. So at the same time, add in, again, a non-methylated B12, like a hydroxy B12 lozenge. All right, the next thing we need to do is to boost our immune system. And again, there's some foundational ways to do this that's also going to help you clear mold. So for instance, vitamin C is amazing for clearing mold. Now, this shouldn't be ascorbic acid. Remember, not ascorbic acid, but a food-based buffered vitamin C. I've talked about that in other videos too. So if you're curious, just let me know. Zinc, everyone is deficient in zinc, and zinc is so important for your immune system. So making sure you get the right form of zinc and the right dosage of zinc. Spirulina is really gentle way to help your body get mycotoxins out of the body. Curcumin is the sort of potent component of turmeric, and it's an anti-inflammatory, again, great for mold. Lemon balm tea also calms the nervous system, and it's just a great herb to antiviral, antibacterial. There's some aromatic herbs that are really good for mold, like rosemary and sage. So you can take rosemary, you can chop it up, you put it on your favorite salad. It's antifungal, antiviral, antibacterial. Rosemary also comes in an essential oil, and you could diffuse it if you don't want to eat it. Sage is another aromatic herb that, again, you can cut it up fresh and put it on your salad, and you can put it on any dish you like. Actually, it's just a yummy flavor, and it's got a lot of phytochemicals. Generally in foods, you want to bring in foods with the most healing properties, and these are going to be your fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables have phytochemicals. These are special chemicals that sometimes they pull these out and put them in supplements like resveratrol and curcumin and things like that, but sometimes they don't. We just don't know all the magic that's in food, so it's just like, just stick with the food because you can't replace the food, right? These phytochemicals have properties that are antifungal, antiviral, antibacterial. Radish is another great food to get rid of mold. Is a sulfur compound. So if you have problems with sulfur, you might not do well with radishes. The sulfur compound in radishes will disarm mold spores. It's also antiviral. Apples have a pectin in the skin, and that binds to mold spores, and that may be on the lining of your digestive tract, so it helps sweep them out into your poop. So you got to be pooping good. You can't be constipated. Oranges are an amazing source of calcium, of vitamin C, and of glutathione. In summary, mold is a trigger. It's not the sole cause of your symptoms. Remediate mold as best you can, but focus on your overall health, strengthening your immune system, addressing nutrient deficiencies, embrace a diet rich in fruits and vegetables and herbs, and provide your body with essential nutrients and natural antifungals, antivirals, and antibacterial properties. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more health insights. See you in the next video. Bye for now.